What is up, you guys? Has been coming at you here with a video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my Magical Musketeer deck profile for the February 5th going forward ban list. Now, I'm super happy about this ban list. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a change is coming into this game. Of course, the top deck's still going to be Spiral and followed by either Trickstar or Pendulum Magician, but I feel that we're going to see a lot of decks like Paleozoic and maybe a few sleeper Dark Horse decks sneak up here and there. So I'm pretty excited for this upcoming format. Now, this is the deck I'm going to be playing competitively. I really like Magical Musketeers. I enjoy their playstyle. I really don't know why people say they're a failed deck. I don't understand what was so broken when they were announced. They weren't the next Zodiac, so I really never understood why people hate on this deck and bash on this deck so much. It's a really fun deck to play. Not only that, there isn't much you have to know about the deck to play it. So basically, this is one of my favorite decks to play. It's fairly consistent. This deck, one of the main problems Magical Musketeers have is if you kill one of the Magical Musketeers, you are left helpless. If you don't draw any of the spells or traps that you need at that moment, you are dead. So, but let's focus on the positive standpoint of this deck, and I'm going to explain each card choice and why I play each one. I'm going to try to explain it the best I can, and at the end I'm going to showcase some test hands so you guys can see what I'll do if the cards I have, so you guys can get an idea of how the deck plays. Now, unfortunately, Gofu and Maxi are gone, so if you've seen my previous profiles, you'll know that I just won't have those. It's basically almost the same deck with a few addition of cards. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to be talking about the main deck, extra deck, and side deck for the future and what I think might be meta, but take the side deck as an open invitation to something you'd probably side in. Now, you play 3 Magical Musketeer Caspar, and they all have the effect, which I'm only going to say one. So if you see a Magical Musketeer monster, they all have this effect. They all have the ability to activate spells, Magical Musket spells and traps from hand, so I'm not going to repeat that anymore. But his effect is, if a card is activated in a row he points to, meaning let's say he's right here and you activate a card right here, you trigger his effect and he allows you to search any Magical Musket card from your deck to your hand. It can be a monster, it could be a spell or trap. Most of the time we're going to be going for a spell or trap because you already normal summon. So you can see his power in the deck. He's basically the searcher. He searches you anything you want. He's something you want to open with. You want to open him and any other Magical Musket card because he basically just extends your negation and lets you adding searches. But keep in mind that all of their effects are once per turn, meaning that if you use his add effect, it's only once per turn. But it could be during either player's turn, so that's something to keep in mind as well. So 3 Magical Musketeer Caspar. Not falling far from the best monster in the deck, we have Magical Musketeer Starfire. Now, what she does is when a spell or trap is activated in her column, she lets you special summon a level 4 or lower Magical Musket monster. Now, what most of the time you do is if you summon her and you have a spell or trap in hand, it doesn't have to be a Magical Musket, it can be any. You will most of the time be special summoning Caspar in defense position. So these two kind of go hand in hand. But for the most part, I find myself going into Caspar because Caspar lets me add. And what I usually do, I'd recommend, even if you're not playing a Pendulum Magician player, I always recommend putting them in front of the scales, because just in case you are, they're going to have to trigger their effects, so you don't have to waste your spell and traps to trigger them. So that's just a small recommendation. I always recommend putting them in the Pendulum scales, even if you don't know what your opponent is playing. So 3 Magical Musketeer Starfire, and she is the second most important card in this deck. Now, this is open for your own interpretation, but I really like Magical Musketeer Kid Brave. One of the reasons being that he's one of the strongest Magical Muskets, being a level 3. And he has the ability where, again, if he's activated, if a spell or trap is activated in his row, you get to ditch a Magical Musketeer card and draw 2. So think of him as a hand destruction. So basically you can get rid of any Magical Musket cards you don't need to hopefully draw 2 more, or hopefully draw any hand traps, because we do play hand traps in the deck. So Magical Musketeer Kid Brave, he just gives you that extra bit of push you may need and get rid of any Magical Musket card you do not need. Now, he's one of my favorites, but unfortunately one of the weakest, Magical Musketeer Doc. Now, what I like so much about the Doc is that when his effect is triggered, a spell or trap is activated in his row, he has the ability to grab a Magical Musket card in the graveyard. It can be a monster, a spell or trap, whatever you may need. Now, the unfortunate thing about the Doc is he is literally the worst one to start off with. You really don't want to start. I'd rather start with any of the other 3 than this guy. He's more of a going like into turn 2, you know, kind of thing. You know, once you already have a Magical Musket card in your grave, so his effect is used to its full potential. But for the most part, we do play a card that makes going first with him relatively easy. So we'll get into that, and I'll explain that when we get into him. But 2 Magical Musketeer dog because he recycles. Now those are all the Magical Musket cards I do play in the deck. I do not like playing Calamities because again, she does nothing going first. You know, her effect is used to its full potential when you have already a Magical Musketeer in the graveyard. She's basically like a monster reborn when her effect is activated. And Wild, again, even though he is the strongest and he is a level 4, I don't play him because again, he's not fully useful if you don't have anything in the grave. Like you want to get the most you can out of this deck because you do only normal summon once. So I feel playing those 11 monsters is perfectly fine. You'll most of the time only draw into 1 or 2, so you'll never really have that problem of not having a Magical Musket, and this deck does have alternate plays. Now let's get into the hand traps. I like to play 2 Battle Fader because if they regeki you or if they get rid of your Magical Musket card, most of the time you will be left helpless. So what Battle Fader prevents is from you getting OTK'd and maybe living another turn and coming back in this duel. So Battle Fader is just basically that, and not only that, not only does he save you, but you can use him for Link Rebo to kind of extend your defense wall. So what you do is when they declare a direct attack, special summon him, ends the battle phase. Simply said, he's a great clutch card. We play 2 Effect Veiler because basically it's cross domination in a monster form. And so when your opponent activates a monster effect, or you could just discard them and negate a monster effect. So for example, you can negate Alistair the Invoker, Trickstar Candida. And again, if you guys are longtime fans of the channel, you guys will know that this is one of my favorite hand traps. It's personally my favorite, that's why I have to play it in ulti. But I only play it at 2 because we already run cross domination, so I don't want to see two cross dominations and 2 Effect Veilers. I'd rather see 1 and 1 and be able to use both in the same turn. So we run 2 Effect Veilers. So 2 Ghost Ogres because she's basically a Desperado when a card activates on the field. Meaning if you don't want to waste your Desperado on a field spell or a monster, you can use Ghost Ogre, so you can save your Desperado for other things. That's basically why I play the hand traps. The hand traps that I play are basically monster counterparts to the Magical Musket cards I play. So 2 Ghost Ogre because she can destroy field spells, she can destroy monsters, she can destroy continuous spells or traps. It's just a great card. Next, one card that opponents hate seeing when I attack with it is Eater of Millions. Now Eater of Millions is one of the funnest cards to use. Your opponent might hate it, but you don't care, because what he does is, so in order to summon him, you have to banish 5 cards either from your hand, face up on the field, or extra decks. So if you guys already play Magic Musketeers, you know you don't go into the extra deck as much. So you just banish 5 cards from there and basically special summon him. And what he does is when he attacks, he basically banishes the card face down, and he gains 100 attack for each banished card face down. Meaning that if your opponent activates Pot of Desires and you activate Pot of Desires, he's basically walking at 2500 attack when you summon him. So he's just a good card, and your opponent has sometimes trouble getting over him. So 2 Eater of Millions because he's relatively easy to summon and he gets rid of any problematic boss monsters you don't want to deal with. For the ones that like to play 1 Monster Reborn, I'm just so glad this card came back. I can't wait to special summon Borolo Dragon, Firewall Dragon, any boss monster of my opponents. So I'm just super happy that they came back. Plus, it triggers my Magical Musketeer's effects, allowing me to plus a little bit more. So Monster Reborn, I like to play it at 1. 1 Raigeki because board wipes are important. 2 Instant Fusion because they allow you to special summon a monster from your extra deck, and I'll talk about that more when we get to the extra deck. Plus, they trigger your Magical Musketeer's effects. For the little draw portion of the deck, I like to play 1 Upstart Goblin because, again, you can trigger Caspar's effect with it, draw your card, and then search with Caspar. So you can basically draw if it's a Magical Musket, and you check your hand, you basically get the one you need, allowing you to like more negation, and so Pot of Desires as well because banish 10, draw 2, your Magical Musketeer effect is activated, or you can choose to activate it and pretty much go on from there. Now this is for the saucy part of the deck, and I actually saw this from some dude named Jose at a regional. He was playing 2 Foolish Barrel Goods and 1 Lost Win. Now what makes this deck, it's basically what makes this so important is that it actually makes Doc easier going first. And not just that, Foolish Barrel Goods can be used to activate your Magical Musket's effects, plus get rid of any card you don't want to see, so it can lower your deck count, meaning that you'll be able to draw into cards you may want to draw into. So for example, let me explain what you do with the Doc. He makes Doc easier going first. So what you do, for example, let's say I have Doc in hand and I open a Foolish Barrel Goods. I'll normal summon my Doc, activate Foolish Barrel Goods. I can send any of the Magical Musket cards, and since his effect activates in a separate chain, I can add it. So for example, let's say I send Last Stand with Foolish Barrel Goods. I'll be able to add it from my graveyard to my hand because of Doc's effect, and since it activates in a separate chain link. But what most of the time I do, if I open the dock, or if I don't open the dock, I'll send Lost Wind to the graveyard with Foolish Barrel Goods, triggering my Magical Musket's effect. So usually if I summon Caspar, activate Foolish Barrel Goods, add my card, send Lost Wind, and now when my opponent special summons from the extra deck, I'll have a Lost Wind to counter that next turn. And not just that, it just adds some form of disruption to the deck, that little woe factor to the deck. So I really enjoyed playing this little 3-card engine, if that's what you like to call it, because it does provide disruption and trigger your Magical Musketeer's effects. Now finally, let's speed up to the Magical Musketeer cards, because if you are a Magical Musketeer player, you know what these cards do. So I'm just going to explain them as quickly as I can to get into more of the video, because you guys have things to do. 2 Magical Musketeer steady hands. They double your monster's attack. They double your Magical Musketeer's monster's attack, but he can't attack directly. It's a quick play. Use it during the damage step. 3 Magical Musketeer Cross Domination. It's basically Effect Veiler, but it lowers the opponent's monster's attack and defense to 0. Use it to get over any problematic boss monsters, or if you're really feeling douchey, you can activate Cross Domination and then activate Steady Hands and basically attack your opponent's monster for some heavy damage. 3 Desperado. It's basically a Ghost Ogre, except it targets one face-up card on the field. Destroy it. And 3 Magical Musket Last Stand. Now what this does is it negates any spell or trap and destroys it. So basically try to negate that Pot Desires, boys. Try to negate those field spells. And basically that's it for the spell and trap lineup. Let's get into the extra deck. 1 token, guys. It's always important to have 1 token. You never know when you're going to need it. I play 1 Decode Talker and 1 Proxy Dragon, basically because Gofu, rest in peace. But in the chance you get to make this card ever again, I always like to have 1 Decode Talker and 1 Proxy Dragon. You play 1 Thousand Eyes Restrict and 1 Link Karibo because basically you can instant fusion, trigger your Magical Musket's effect, special summon Thousand Eyes Restrict, resolve Magical Musketeer's effect, and take a monster with Thousand Eyes Restrict of your opponents and make Link Karibo and basically just continue from there. So 1000 Eyes Restrict and 1 Link Karibo. The Utopia package. Now many of you guys may be asking, how do you make Utopia the Lightning if you only play what's her face, if you only play Starfire? Now what you do is instant fusion. We do play a level 4, so I'll explain to that, but making Utopia the Lightning is relatively easy. You don't have to play him because I understand he can be a bit pricey, but I always recommend it because if you can make him, Utopia the Lightning is a game winner. 1 Baguska. 1 Baguska because he ends your opponent's turns, stalls for plays. Magical Musket sometimes need that. Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend and Cyframe Lord Omega because you can use any of the level 3s and Sea Monster of Theseus to make. Panzer Dragon because you can make him with instant fusion. Past turn, he pops your opponent's card because he was destroyed by instant fusion. So it's basically like a 1-for-1 and you can trigger your Magical Musket's effect. I call him Carb Warrior. He's basically a level 4 instant fusion target. Flame Ghost. He's a level 3 instant fusion target. And Invoke Raijin because you can Book of Moon him and prevent him from being destroyed by by the instant fusion effect. And that basically wraps it up for the extra deck. Let's get into the side deck. Now for the side deck, I like to always play 2 Gamma Seals because he's the easiest one to beat over. Plus, get rid of any problematic boss monsters. 3 Denko Seka because I really fear that back row is going to become pretty heavy. So I recommend if you guys can pick your guys up right now, they're only about $1 or $2. Pick them up now because that back row is coming, boys. It's getting heavy. 2 Cosmic Cyclones. Sometimes you really don't want to deal with those Pendulum players because they are still going to be there. Or the True Dracos, just banish their cards. Or the Trickstar Reincarnation, banish it. Get rid of it. Make sure they don't have anything. But I always like to play Cosmic Cyclone because banishing is a little bit better than sending to the graveyard, destroying, because everything has a graveyard effect nowadays. 2 D-Barrier, because you can basically stop anything but links. Anti-spells, because every deck uses spells. And the new addition to the Solemn Brigade, which is going to be 2 Solemn Strikes, 1 Solemn Warning, and 1 Solemn Judgment. Now what I usually do is if I lost the first duel, or I win the first duel, if I lost the first game, I'll usually side in these 4 because your opponent takes out every back row hate he plays in his deck. So if you played Cosmic Cyclone, he's going to take him out knowing that you don't play spells and you don't play back row. So this kind of captures your opponent off guard. And I always recommend this tactic when playing Magical Musket because it does catch your opponent off guard. I've played multiple times with this. I've figured that it works really good. I take out some of the cards that aren't as good going first, like some of the hand traps, and I put these bad boys in. and it catches my opponent by surprise every time, because not only did they take out their back row removal, I just have some defense for me. So that's basically it for the extra deck. Now let's get into some test hands. Alright guys, so we're going to get into some quick test hands so you guys see how the deck plays, performs, and what are some of the plays you can do. Now I'm going to leave this footage running completely so you guys can see if the deck breaks. I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm going to be completely 100% honest, and this is going to be completely not edited, so it's just going to keep rolling. So you guys can see, just to show something, the cards are already shuffled. There are no like combo starters here, no nothing, no gimmicks, no showing. I'm doing this simply for the fun of it. Let's get into it. Draw 5. So let's say we put our deck down. Our opponent cuts. We draw 5. We drew, which isn't too shabby of a hand. What I would normally do right here is, alright, so let's normal summon our Starfire, right? Let's normal summon our Starfire. Let's special summon Eater of Millions. Let's banish those 5. Now for the most part, I'd probably banish Ghost Flame. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I forgot to put Acid Golem in the deck profile, so make sure you guys don't forget that. Decode Talker and 1 Utopia Prime. Right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we need 1 more. Let's go. We need that. Let's go 1 Baguska, because we get the chance to make Utopia Landing. Let's make Utopia Landing. So we special summon Eater of Millions now, right? We could activate. Actually, that isn't too good of a hand, but probably you could activate Magical Musketeer Cross Domination on Eater of Millions, and special summon yourself a Caspar for next turn. Then if you want, you could probably use Eater of Millions to make Link Karibo and basically just go from there. And in your hand you have 2 last stands. You can use, I'd use the first one under Caspar just to get the more searches. But that's basically what you can do to dig deeper into the deck. So that's play 1. Let's get into draw number 2. Let's make sure we put these back in here. Basically, let's get into it. Let's draw 5. 1, Cross Domination. 2, last stand. Effect Veiler, Battle Fader, and Magical Musketeer Caspar. Since you want to win the die roll and you always want to go first, let's normal summon that Caspar, and basically we just sit on him at this point. So now what will happen is your opponent will go. You most of the time will be able to negate something. So you have Effect Veiler, you have Battle Fader. What I'd do first is I'd probably use the Cross Domination, just in my personal opinion. I'd use Cross Domination on whatever he summons, or let's say he uses a field spell, most opponents do. Let's just last stand it, and what I would add is, honestly, I'd add Desperado right away. Not just because you have Cross Domination in hand, just in case they enter the battle phase. You have Effect Veiler, and now with Desperado, you can basically stop them from another field spell or any monster attacking, or basically anything on that sort. Plus, you have Battle Fader to save your sorry behind. So your hand's left with that, and you basically negated a spell. So this is test hand 2. Let's get into the next one. Now, while these hands aren't like ridiculously broken, Magical Musketeers never really played like that. They've always played like a more negate and gain advantage off negating your opponent like that. So if you guys are looking to play a deck that kind of makes some crazy boards, this really isn't the deck for you. This deck really just like focuses on negating and gaining advantage like that. Why I don't play the Ties of the Brethren build is because I like to, you kind of need Magical Musket cards in your hand, and I like to play Pot of Desires. And playing Wild and Calamities just puts you in a situation where you will draw Magical Musket monsters, but not Magical Musket spells and traps. So that's the main reason why I really don't play too many monsters. But let's get in that last cut just so you guys see. No funny business right here. Let's draw 5. Cross Dominate, Steady Hands, Cross Domination, Starfire, 1 Effect Veiler, and 1 Ghost Ogre. Now this is pretty cool. This can go either one of 2 ways. Let's say we're going first because you always want to go first. Normal summon your Starfire. What you could do is you could activate Steady Hands right now to get yourself the Caspar as of right now. To maybe your opponent will will hurt you later with something. So that's probably what I'd do. Just so you could, yeah, that's basically what I would add. Steady hands, push summon Kaspar, and basically just wait for your opponent to do something. Now you have Ghost Ogre, Cross Domination, and Effect Veiler in hand. So again, I'd use the Effect Veiler on any of their normal summon monsters, never on a special summon monster. And I always use Cross Domination when they enter the battle phase, but I mean when during the damage step. So I'll usually use it under Kaspar and add like a Desperado, because if it's like the damage step, you know, they're probably going to attack with something else. And basically you'll trigger your Starfire's effect with the one you add off of Kaspar. But let's do one last. There you go, no funny business here. The opponent gets that last cut. Alright. Let's set it down and draw our 5. We drew Battle Fader. Good card going first. Lost Win. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you guys can see here, we kind of brick. But let's say we use that Pot of Desires and our opponent doesn't have Ash, right? Let's see what we would have banished. Well, that's their whole engine right there. 3, 3, 3. Let's see what we draw. Could it save us? And yes, it can. It can kind of save us. So Pot of Desires, even though I just banished 10, those are 10 resources I won't be needing. Like, no. So that's why Pot of Desire is such a great card in my opinion, because it could potentially unbrick you. And for this deck, if I had a Magical Musket, it would have triggered their effect. So I'd just do that, and then probably just set the Lost Win for later. And now I have Cross Domination and Last Stand in hand. But other than that, I hope you guys, so with that said in mind, you know, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys learned something from this deck profile. I hope you guys, if you didn't already know how to play Magic Musketeers, I hope you learned how to play them. I hope you guys, you know, have an understanding on how their effects work. You know, you activate the card under it first, and then their effects activate in a separate chain. So sometimes you can get around Ash Blossom relatively easy and still be able to add. So other than that, thank you guys for watching. My name is Sesma. Hope you guys have fun. Let's enjoy this new format. And until the next time, guys, see you later.